The Grand Synod of the Ethelgard Dominion did not tolerate silence well, yet silence was the only thing that filled the cavernous obsidian hall. The air, usually thick with the hum of grav drones and the chittering of 1,000 distinct species debating trade routes and border skirmishes, was stagnant, heavy with a dread that tasted like ozone and copper. In the center of the amphitheater, suspended within a containment field of shimmering hard light, a holographic projection rotated slowly. It was a grainy, high-contrast image captured by deep-void sensors, distorted by the sheer volume of radiation bleeding off the object. It was a ship, though it resembled no vessel ever forged in the orbital shipyards of the core systems. It was a scarred, brutalist monolith of dark metal, devoid of the elegant curves of Ethelgard aesthetics or the crystalline sharpness of the Krell warbarges. It looked like a chunk of raw mountain torn from a planet's crust and hurled into the void, fitted with engines that burned with a spectral blue-white fury. But it was not the ship's design that had silenced the High Council, nor was it the weapon signatures that the sensors struggled to classify. It was the trajectory. The ship had not warped in from the trade lanes. It had not emerged from a hyperlane gate. It had drifted on sublight thrusters out of the veil of atrophy. High Admiral Kalen, his chitinous carapace polished to a dull sheen that denoted his rank as the supreme commander of the combined fleets, stared at the hologram with compound eyes that twitched in involuntary spasms of disbelief. He rested his upper manipulatorms on the railing of his podium, feeling the cold vibration of the dampeners. The veil of atrophy was not a place one traveled through. It was a region of space, a dense cluster of unstable stars and gravitational anomalies, known to the galaxy as the graveyard of physics. It was the deadliest world writ large, a sector where the background radiation alone would boil the blood of a Krell warrior in seconds, where gravity shears could snap a dreadnought's keel like a dry twig. No probe had ever returned from the veil. No signal had ever pierced its shroud. It was the edge of the known map, the warning sign that marked the limit of life itself. And yet this ghost ship, this drifting tomb, had emerged from the heart of it, its hull scorched by cosmic fires that should have vaporized it, its engines humming with a defiant, rhythmic pulse. Kalen felt a chill ripple through his dorsal spines. To come from the veil was impossible. To survive it was godlike. To drift out of it, silent and unhailing, suggested that whatever was on board had conquered death itself. "The sensor readings are confirmed, High Admiral," a technician whispered, the voice amplified by the acoustics of the hall, sounding terrified. "The hull composition is an alloy we cannot identify, dense, incredibly dense. It is absorbing 70% of our active scans, but the thermal signatures, they are there, faint, regulated, but present. There is heat inside that shell." Life, the question came from Exarch Vok, the representative of the Krell. Vok was a massive creature, a towering heap of muscle and aggression, his skin like armored leather. He stood on the opposite side of the chamber, his mandibles clicking in a gesture of dismissive rage. "You speak of life, technician, in a vessel that drifted from the veil. It is a derelict, a glitch in the sensors, or perhaps a trap sent by the Outer Rim separatists to frighten us. There is no biology that can withstand the radiation of that sector. Even if the ship survived, the crew would be soup. It is a ghost ship, nothing more." Kalen turned his head slowly, the servo motors in his ceremonial collar whirring. "A trap does not drift for centuries, Vok. The isotopic decay on the hull suggests this vessel has been in the void for a long time. But the engines are active. The navigation deflectors are active. If it were a derelict, it would have been pulled into the gravity well of the binary stars near the border. It is correcting its course. It is steering." "Then we destroy it," Vok snarled, slamming a fist onto his console. "It is an anomaly. It comes from the accursed dark. We do not invite the unknown into the core. We burn it before it spreads whatever plague killed its crew. The Krell fleet is ready. My gunners are already tracking a firing solution." "You will stand down, Exarch." Kalen's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of the Dominion's law. "We are not barbarians who shoot at shadows. If there is a guidance system active, there may be intelligence. If there is intelligence, there is a chance for knowledge. And if they survived the veil, they possess technology that could shift the balance of power in the entire galaxy. We do not burn what we do not understand." "Technology," Vok scoffed, gesturing at the ugly, blocky image of the ship. "Look at it, it is crude. It lacks the grace of warp field geometry. It uses chemical propulsion and kinetic barriers. It is primitive. It is a relic of some dead race that was too stupid to avoid the radiation belts. You are chasing ghosts, Admiral, and you risk the safety of the Citadel by letting it drift closer." The debate raged for hours, a cyclic storm of fear and curiosity. The scientific casts argued for preservation, their optical sensors flashing with greed at the prospect of studying hull materials that could withstand the veil. The religious castes wept and chanted, calling the ship a herald of the end times, a vessel sent by the void gods to judge the living. The military factions were split, with the Krell demanding immediate destruction and the Ethelgard advocating for a blockade and boarding action. Through it all, the ship continued its slow, silent drift. It did not hail them. It did not raise shields. It simply moved, an implacable iron mountain sliding through the vacuum, heading straight for the high-orbit anchorages of the Citadel. It was a slow-motion collision of worlds, the unstoppable force of the unknown meeting the immovable object of galactic bureaucracy. Finally, the decision was made not by consensus but by necessity. The ship had crossed the outer perimeter. The automated defense grids were locking on. If they did not act, the station's AI would fire automatically. Kalen overrode the protocols, his claw hovering over the master control. "We will intercept," he announced, his voice echoing with finality. "A joint task force. My flagship, the Glory of Dawn, will lead. Vok, bring your dreadnought, the Iron Tooth, but keep your weapons cold. We will hail them. If they do not answer, we will scan. If they are dead, we will tow the hulk away. But if they are alive, we will see what kind of beings can walk through the fire of the veil and live to tell of it." The approach to the ghost ship was an exercise in tension that stretched the nerves of every crewman to the breaking point. The Glory of Dawn was a masterpiece of Ethelgard engineering, a sleek spire of white ceramic and gold filigree, humming with the power of a singularity core. Beside it, the Iron Tooth was a predator, dark and bristling with railguns. Yet, as they drew closer to the intruder, both massive vessels felt insignificant. The ghost ship was colossal. It was not merely a ship. It was a traveling city, a cylindrical arc of scarred metal that blotted out the stars. Up close, the damage was visible. There were craters in the armor that could have swallowed a corvette. There were scorch marks that trailed for kilometers, evidence of plasma storms or stellar flares that had lashed against the hull. But the ship held. It was unbroken. It was a testament to a philosophy of survival that prioritized durability over aesthetics, function over form. "Hail them again," Kalen ordered, standing on the bridge of his flagship. The view screen was dominated by the gray, pitted surface of the stranger. "Use all frequencies, wideband, subspace, laser comms, try the mathematical primes, try the pictorial greetings." "Nothing, Admiral," the communications officer reported, his voice trembling. "There is no return signal, but I am picking up internal noise. It is rhythmic, low frequency. It sounds like machinery or perhaps a heartbeat. It is too slow to be a biological heart, but it is steady." "Get us alongside." Vok's face appeared on a secondary screen, looking impatient. "My scanners are penetrating the outer layer. There is an atmosphere inside. Nitrogen, oxygen, argon. It is a volatile mix, highly reactive. And the gravity. By the void, the gravity plating is set to maximum. It is generating a field equivalent to a super-Earth. If we board that thing, we will be crushed." "Gravity compensation suits," Kalen murmured, his mind racing. "High-gravity worlders, that explains the density of the hull. They evolved on a prison planet. A world where the gravity tries to pull you into the ground and the air tries to burn you. No wonder they survived the veil. They were born in a crucible." "I am detecting movement," the tactical officer shouted, causing heads to snap around. "A bay door is opening, amidships. It is mechanical, hydraulic, very slow." On the screen, a section of the scarred metal groaned open, revealing a dark cavern lit by flickering amber warning lights. It was an invitation, or a mouth opening to swallow them. "They want us to enter," Kalen said, realizing the implication. "They are not dead, they are waiting." "It is a trap," Vok roared. "I will fire a warning shot across their bow." "You will do no such thing?" Kalen snapped. "If they wanted to fight, they would have fired by now. Look at the energy readings on their weapon ports. They are cold. They are powering down. This is a parley. Prepare the shuttle. I am going over." "I am coming with you," Vok growled. "If you die, I want to be there to take C. End of the fleet and burn that hulk to ash." The shuttle ride was a descent into the underworld. The interior of the ghost ship's landing bay was vast and industrial, smelling of hydraulic fluid, ozone, and something muskier, something biological and ancient. The shuttle touched down on a deck of grated steel, the landing gear clanking loudly in the stillness. Kalen and Vok, accompanied by a squad of elite guards in heavy exoskeletons, descended the ramp. The gravity hit them immediately. Even with the compensation fields of their suits, Kalen felt heavy, his movements sluggish. Vok, naturally stronger, grunted but stood tall. The airlock cycled with a hiss of decompressing gases, and the inner door slid open. They expected monsters. They expected cyborgs fused with their ship. They expected the silence of the tomb. Instead, they found a corridor. It was utilitarian, lined with pipes and conduits, the walls painted a dull, calming gray. The lighting was soft, simulated sunlight that felt harsh to Kalen's sensitive eyes. And standing at the end of the corridor, waiting for them, was a group of bipeds. They were shockingly small. They wore no armor. They carried no weapons. They were dressed in simple, fabric uniforms of dark blue and charcoal, with soft boots and insignia stitched onto their shoulders. They had soft skin, vulnerable to the slightest cut, and patches of fur only on the tops of their heads. They looked fragile, insignificant. The leader of the group stepped forward. It was a female, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her face lined with the stress of command, but her eyes clear and sharp. She held a small device in her hand, a universal translator that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts. "I am Admiral Kalen of the Ethelgard Dominion." Kalen projected his voice, the translator on his chest chattering the words in a series of clicks and whistles. "We welcome you to the Citadel. Identify yourselves." The small female looked at the device in her hand, adjusted a dial, and then spoke. Her voice was soft, melodic, yet it carried a resonance that seemed to vibrate in the heavy air. "I am Captain Alara Vance of the United Earth Starship Aegis. We apologize for the unannounced arrival. Our navigation sensors were damaged in the transit. We did not know we had reached inhabited space until we saw your beacons." Vok laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You drifted from the Veil of Atrophy in this bucket of bolts, and you look like this. How are you not dead, little thing? The radiation alone should have melted your soft skin." Captain Vance looked at Vok, her expression unchanging. She did not flinch at the giant alien's aggression. She did not look at the heavy plasma rifles of the guards. She simply tilted her head. "The Veil, is that what you call the Traverse? It was rough, but the Aegis is built for endurance. We are not from here. We are from a long way away, and where we come from, radiation is just weather." "You claim to have crossed the Veil," Kalen pressed, stepping between Vok and the human. "That region is a graveyard. No species has ever entered it and returned. Why did you go there? Were you exiled? Are you refugees?" Vance smiled, a small, tight expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We weren't exiled. We were exploring. We are charting a path. The sensors said the interference was high, so we went to look. We didn't realize that for the rest of the galaxy it was a no-go zone. To us, it just looked like a challenge." "A challenge?" Vok sneered. "You speak with arrogance for a species that looks like it would break in a strong wind. You are unarmed, you are unarmored, you drift in a broken ship. You are weak." "We are tired," Vance corrected him gently. "Not weak. There is a difference, and as for weapons, we prefer not to carry them to a first meeting. It's rude." "Rude?" Vok stepped forward, looming over her. "In the Dominion, strength is the only courtesy. You are trespassers. You will surrender your vessel and your crew for processing. We will determine if you are a threat or a resource." Kalen tried to intervene, but Vance held up a hand. It was a delicate hand, pale and small. "We are not surrendering," she said, her voice dropping an octave, losing its melodic quality and becoming flat, factual. "We are here to trade information. We need star charts to find our way home. In exchange, we can offer data on the Traverse, but we will not be processed, and we will not give up our ship." "You have no choice," Vok roared, reaching for his sidearm. The reaction was instantaneous. It did not come from the humans behind Vance. It came from the ship itself. The lights in the corridor turned a deep blood red. The gravity, already heavy, suddenly spiked. Kalen fell to his knees, his exoskeleton whining as it fought to keep him upright. Vok was slammed to the deck, his massive bulk pinned by invisible hands. The guards collapsed, their weapon. Clattering uselessly. Only the humans remained standing. They stood comfortably, unaffected, as if they were made of stone. Vance looked down at Vok, her expression one of mild disappointment. "I told you," she said. "We are tired. We don't want to fight, but the Aegis protects her own. This ship was built to survive a world where the gravity fluctuates by 300% in an hour. We can localize the deck plating. Please don't make us demonstrate the other defensive systems. We really just want some coffee and a star map." The gravity eased just enough to let the aliens breathe, but not enough to let them stand. Kalen looked up at the human captain, seeing her with new eyes. The fragility was a lie. The soft skin was a wrapper for something incredibly dense, incredibly resilient. They walked in high gravity as if it were nothing. They manipulated the fundamental forces of their vessel with a thought. They had drifted from the deadliest sector in the galaxy not by luck, but because they were harder than the void itself. "We will negotiate," Kalen wheezed, his respect for the ghosts growing into a terrified awe. The negotiation took place in the Grand Synod, the humans having been shuttled over to the station. They walked into the chamber without suits, breathing the standard mix of the station air, though they complained it was thin and lacked texture. They sat in the center of the arena, a small delegation of 5, surrounded by thousands of aliens who looked upon them with a mix of fascination and horror. The humans were calm, unnervingly calm. They drank the water provided to them, they looked at the holographic maps, and they spoke in low, measured tones. It was revealed that they came from a world called Terra, a planet located on the other side of the veil. They described it casually, but the details sent shivers through the assembly. A world with tectonic plates that constantly ground against each other, creating earthquakes and volcanoes. A world with weather patterns that spawned hurricanes and tornadoes capable of scouring cities. A biology based on relentless predation and viral mutation. A sun that bombarded the surface with radiation that the humans had simply adapted to, their skin producing pigments to block it, their cells repairing the damage in real time. To the Dominion, Terra sounded like a level of hell. To the humans, it was just home. "We underestimated the density of the veil," Vance explained to the Council, pointing to the star map. "We thought it was just a dense nebula. We didn't realize it was a gravimetric distortion zone until we were halfway through. Our warp drive failed, so we had to switch to the impulse engines. It took us. Well, relative to us, it's been a few years. Relative to you, I suspect it's been longer. Time gets funny in there." "You spent years in the veil," a scientist from the collective gasped. "Subjected to the psychic screams of the dead stars, how did you not go mad? The isolation, the darkness." "We have entertainment logs," Vance shrugged. "And we have work, we maintain the ship, we train, we sleep. Humans are good at endurance, we have a saying, this too shall pass. We just kept going one day at a time. The darkness is only scary if you forget to turn on the lights." Vok, who had been brooding in silence since his humiliation on the ship, finally spoke. "You speak of endurance, but you are still just flesh. You have no claws, you have no carapace. You rely on your machines. If we stripped you of your technology, you would be prey." One of the other humans, a large male with a scar running down his face, leaned forward. "We are the technology, big guy. We built the machines. We built the ship. We built the logic that runs the gravity plating. You think strength is having a hard shell. Strength is looking at a star that wants to kill you and building a suit that lets you walk on it. Strength is knowing you are small and soft and deciding to conquer the sky anyway. You rely on your biology. We transcended ours." The tension in the room was palpable. The humans were not behaving like a lost, desperate crew. They were behaving like ambassadors of a power that didn't feel the need to posture. They were offering trade deals, rare minerals from the veil, data on subspace anomalies in exchange for basic supplies and charts. It was a fair deal, too fair. Kalen couldn't shake the feeling that they were holding back. They were hiding something. The reveal came 3 days later. The Dominion's long-range sensors picked up a new signature. It was not a ghost ship. It was a fleet. A massive armada of hive ships, the scourge of the void, a parasitic race that consumed entire star systems. They had been moving toward the Citadel for weeks, masked by the radiation shadow of the binary star. Now they were here. Thousands of bioships, hungry and mindless, descending on the station. The Dominion fleet scrambled, but they were out of position. The Iron Tooth and the Glory of Dawn moved to intercept, but the sheer numbers of the scourge were overwhelming. Panic erupted in the station. The Council prepared to evacuate. In the war room, Kalen watched the tactical display with despair. "We cannot hold them," he said. "There are too many. They will breach the shields in an hour. We must abandon the Citadel." Vance stood in the corner of the room, watching the screen. She was drinking a cup of the hot, dark liquid she called coffee. She looked at the approaching swarm, then at Kalen. "Is that the scourge?" she asked. "Yes," Kalen said, his voice hollow. "The end of all things, they eat biomass. They will consume us all." "We've seen them before," Vance said casually. "On the other side of the veil, they tried to eat a colony of ours on Mars. It didn't go well for them." "You fought the scourge?" Vox stared at her. "With what, your mining ship?" Vance set her cup down. "Admiral Kalen, I need permission to unseal the Aegis's secondary cargo hold, and I need you to link your tactical network to our fire control, just to avoid friendly fire." "You are a transport," Vox shouted. "You cannot fight a fleet." "I told you," Vance said, her eyes turning cold, the calm facade slipping just enough to reveal the predator beneath. We are from Earth. We don't build ships that can't fight. We just prefer not to start it. But if you want to see what we carry, grant the access." Kalen looked at her. He saw the steel in her spine. He nodded. "Access granted. Save us if you can." Vance tapped her comms unit. "Control, this is Vance. Wake up the kids. Full spread. Pattern Alpha Zero. Clear the sky." On the view screen, the Aegis, the ugly, scarred block of metal, began to change. Panels that looked like hull plating retracted. The scars on the side of the ship were revealed to be launch bays. The ship didn't fire lasers. It didn't fire plasma. It exhaled. Thousands upon thousands of drones poured out of the Aegis like a swarm of angry wasps. But these were not mindless machines. They moved with a terrifying, synchronized intelligence. They were small, fast, and armed with kinetic penetrators, solid slugs of tungsten accelerated to a fraction of the speed of light. They didn't burn the Scourge ships, they shattered them. The Aegis itself spun on its axis, and the main engine at the rear, which everyone had assumed was for propulsion, split open. It was a railgun the size of a skyscraper. It fired a single shot. The round impacted the Scourge mothership, a creature the size of a moon. The impact was silent in the void, but the result was cataclysmic. The mothership didn't just explode, it liquefied. The kinetic energy transfer was so massive it created a shockwave in the surrounding dust cloud. Inside the war room, the aliens watched in stunned silence. The fragile humans were dismantling the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known with the efficiency of a butcher dressing a carcass. It wasn't a battle, it was an extermination. The human tactics were cold, logical, and brutal. They targeted the engines, the nerve centers, the breeding sacs. They didn't waste energy. They didn't glory in the kill. They simply removed the obstacle. Within 20 minutes, the Scourge fleet was drifting debris. Vance tapped her comms again. "All birds home, cool down the main rail, reload the racks." She turned back to the council. "Threat neutralized, now about those star charts." The silence that followed was different from the one in the beginning. It was not the silence of fear, but of reverence. The humans were not weak. They were monsters. But they were monsters on a leash, held back by a code of ethics and a desire for peace that was stronger than their capacity for violence. In the aftermath, the political landscape of the Citadel shifted overnight. The humans were no longer refugees. They were the most powerful military asset in the sector, but they refused to lead. They refused to conquer. They simply wanted to fix their ship and go home. However, the final twist was yet to come. During the victory feast, Kalen approached Vance. He was humbled, his arrogance gone. "Captain," he said, "I must ask, your ship, it is a warship, a dreadnought. Why disguise it as a transport? Why hide such power?" Vance looked at him, and for the first time she looked tired, truly, deeply tired. "It's not a warship, Admiral, it is a transport." "A transport for what? Those drones." "No," Vance said softly. She gestured for him to follow her. They walked out to a balcony overlooking the docking bay where the Aegis was undergoing repairs. "The drones are just the security detail. The railgun is for clearing asteroids. The Aegis is a containment vessel." "Containment?" Kalen felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "What are you containing?" "We didn't leave Earth to explore," Vance said, looking out at the stars. "We left because we found something buried deep in the crust of our planet, something ancient. A signal. It was waking up, and it was hungry, not like the Scourge. The Scourge eats flesh. This thing eats reality. It feeds on consciousness." She turned to face him. "We couldn't kill it. We couldn't destroy it. So we dug it up, we put it in the strongest box we could build, the Aegis, and we took it as far away from our people as we could. We flew it into the Veil of Atrophy because we thought the radiation and the gravity would keep it asleep. We were trying to dump it in a black hole on the other side, but we drifted off course." Kalen stared at the massive ship. The scarred hull, the heavy gravity, the silence. It wasn't a fortress to keep the crew safe. It was a cage. "You are carrying a god killer," Kalen whispered. "We're carrying a nightmare," Vance corrected. "And the heartbeat you heard, the low rhythm, that's not machinery, that's it, it's dreaming. And as long as we keep the gravity high and the temperature low, it stays asleep. That's why we're so calm, Admiral. That's why we don't get scared of your fleets or your threats. Because we sleep on top of a horror that makes the Scourge look like a petting zoo. We are the jailers, and we are very, very good at our job." She took a sip of her coffee. "Now, we really need those charts. We need to find a black hole before the baby wakes up. You understand?" Kalen understood. He looked at the humans, the small, soft, fragile-looking humans, and he saw them for what they truly were. They were not just warriors. They were the guardians of the galaxy. They had taken the deadliest thing on their world and carried it into the dark to save everyone else. "You shall have your charts," Kalen said, bowing low, a gesture reserved for emperors. "And you shall have an escort. The Dominion fleet will clear your path. We will not ask what is in the box. We will simply help you bury it." Vance smiled, a genuine, weary smile. "Thank you, Admiral. It's been a long trip. It'll be nice to have some company for the last leg." The Aegis departed 3 cycles later, flanked by the glory of dawn and the Iron Tooth. It moved slowly, majestically back toward the dark, a ghost ship drifting from the deadliest world, carrying a burden that could end the universe, guided by the only species crazy enough and brave enough to carry it. The humans were on board, and for the first time in history, the galaxy felt safe because the monsters were on their side. The journey to the event horizon of the Great Void, the destination the humans had selected, was not merely a logistical movement of ships. It was a pilgrimage. The news of the Aegis and its terrible cargo had spread through the Dominion hierarchy, classified at the highest levels, yet leaked in whispers that became legends. The crew of the Glory of Dawn looked at the human vessel not with the disdain they had held days prior, but with a superstitious terror mixed with profound gratitude. They watched the Aegis drift on the tactical plot, a silent giant amidst the stars, and they prayed to their various deities that the heartbeat within remained steady. Inside the Aegis, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to the reverent fear outside. It was a world of organized chaos and disciplined calm. In the engineering bays, human technicians worked in shifts that would have killed an Ethelgard laborer. They stripped conduits, reinforced the magnetic containment fields, and monitored the payload with an obsessiveness that bordered on religious fervor. Chief Engineer Hideo leaned over a railing, wiping grease from his forehead. The gravity in the core containment section was set to 4G to a normal human. It would be crushing. To the crew of the Aegis, augmented by years of gene therapy and exoskeletal bracing woven into their flight suits, it was just another Tuesday. Below him, in the center of the spherical chamber, suspended by rings of impossible energy, was the object. It was a shard of void-black crystal, pulsing with a violet light that seemed to eat the photons around it. It thrummed, thump-thump, thump-thump. "Status," Hideo barked into his headset. "Resonance is climbing, Chief," a junior tech replied, her voice strained. "The wake-up cycle is accelerating. It sensed the scourge. It fed a little on the death energy from that battle. It's getting restless." "Clamp it down," Hideo ordered. "Reroute power from life support if you have to. If that thing wakes up before we hit the event horizon, there won't be a galaxy left to argue about." "Aye, Chief. Rerouting auxiliary power. Temperature dropping to near absolute zero." On the bridge, Captain Vance watched the readout. The heartbeat slowed. She exhaled, a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She picked up the comms link to the Dominion flagship. "Admiral Kalen, we have a minor fluctuation in the containment field. We need to increase speed. Can your fleet keep up if we push the engines to 110%? On the bridge of the GL. Ori of Dawn, Kalen's mandibles twitched. "Captain Vance, our engines are already at maximum safe output. To go faster would risk a core breach." "Safe output is a suggestion, Admiral," Vance replied, her voice dry. "We are pushing. Stay close in our wake. Our navigational deflector will clear the debris. Just don't fall behind. The radiation bleed from our engines is going to get nasty." "Understood," Kalen said. "We will attempt to match." The fleet accelerated. The stars blurred into streaks of light. They were heading for the eye of the storm, the supermassive black hole at the center of the sector, known as the Maw of Eternity. It was a one-way trip for the payload. The plan was simple: fly the Aegis to the accretion disk, jettison the containment module directly into the singularity, and burn hard to escape the gravity well. It was a maneuver that had a success probability of 14% according to Dominion AI. The humans had calculated it at 15.2% and decided those were good odds. As they approached the Maw, the physics of the universe began to break down. Space-time curved and twisted. Colors shifted. The communication channels became filled with static that sounded like whispering voices. The crews of the alien ships began to report hallucinations, seeing dead loved ones, hearing their names called from the dark corners of the bridge. The payload was waking up, and its dreams were leaking into reality. Admiral Vox's voice came over the channel, sounding small and frightened, a stark departure from his usual bluster. "My crew, they are weeping. They refuse to man their posts. They say the void is speaking to them. They say it wants to be let in." "Hold your line, Vox," Kalen commanded, though he too felt the pressure in his skull, a cold finger scratching at the back of his mind. It is a psionic projection. It is not real. Focus on the Aegis. Follow the humans. They are the anchor. And indeed, the humans seemed immune, or perhaps simply stubborn. On the Aegis, the crew went about their duties with grim determination. They hummed songs to drown out the whispers. They recited mathematical constants. They focused on the job. They had lived with the monster in the basement for years. They knew its tricks. Approaching the drop point, Vance announced. The Aegis was now vibrating violently, the metal groaning under the tidal forces of the black hole. The maw was a terrifying abyss before them, a circle of absolute nothingness ringed by a swirling fire of doomed matter. Shields are at critical, hull integrity at 40%. We are going to make the drop in T-2 minutes. We are with you, Kalen said. The Dominion fleet has formed a phalanx behind you. We will absorb the radiation backlash. Appreciate it, Vance said. Engineering, prepare to blow the maglocks on my mark. The seconds ticked by like hours. The whispering grew to a scream. The violet light from the containment hold began to bleed through the hull of the Aegis, visible even to the escort ships. The entity knew what was happening. It was fighting back. It's trying to override the ship's computer, Hideo shouted from the core. It's locking the clamps. Manual release, Vance ordered. Send a team to the blast doors. Blow them if you have to. I'm on it, Hideo said. He grabbed a satchel of charges and sprinted toward the airlock. He knew it was a one-way trip. The radiation in that chamber was already lethal. Hideo, wait, Vance started, but the link went dead. On the visual feed, Kalen saw a small explosion on the hull of the Aegis. A section of the underbelly blew outward. A massive, spherical object, glowing with malevolent violet light, tumbled out into the void. Payload away, Vance's voice cracked. All ships, evasive maneuvers, hard to port, burn everything you have. The Aegis banked sharply, its thrusters flaring white-hot. The Dominion ships followed suit, their structures groaning as they fought the gravity of the black hole. Behind them, the payload fell. It didn't fall silently. As it crossed the event horizon, a psychic shockwave blasted outward. It was a sound that was felt rather than heard, a scream of frustration and rage that echoed in the souls of every living being in the fleet. And then, silence. The singularity swallowed the nightmare. The violet light was extinguished. The whispers stopped. The fleet drifted in the calm of deep space, engines cooling, crews gasping for air. They had done it. Admiral Kalen, Vance's voice came over the comms. It was weak. Status report. We are intact, Captain, Kalen said, slumping into his command chair. We have sustained minor structural damage, but we are alive. And you? We lost some good people, Vance said. Chief Hideo didn't make it out of the airlock, but the ship is holding together. We're drifting again, but we're alive. You have saved us all, Vok cut in. The Krell Empire owes you a debt of blood. We will not forget this. Just help us fix our warp drive, Vance said. We're ready to go home, real home, Earth. It's loud and it's messy and the weather tries to kill you, but it's better than this. The repairs took weeks. During that time, the cultural exchange that Kalen had hoped for finally happened. The humans, no longer guarding a cosmic horror, relaxed. They showed the aliens their music, which was chaotic and emotional. They shared their food, which was spicy and varied. They told stories of their history, wars, famines, plagues, and how they had survived them all to become the custodians of the dark. The aliens learned that humanity was not a race of warriors, nor a race of scholars. They were a race of survivors. They were the cockroaches of the galaxy, the ones who refused to die, the ones who would build a home on a volcano because the soil was fertile. And because of that resilience, they were the only ones capable of holding the line when the universe tried to break. When the Aegis finally spooled up its repaired warp drive, the entire Dominion fleet formed an honor guard. They lined the path of the Vector, their running lights flashing in a salute. Fair winds, Aegis, Kalen broadcasted. The stars will remember you. Stay safe, Admiral, Vance replied. And remember, if you find something scary in the dark, don't poke it, just call us. With a flash of light that defied the physics of the sector, the ghost ship vanished, jumping back to the deadliest world. Kalen stood on the bridge of the glory of dawn, watching the empty space where the humans had been. He felt a sense of loss, but also a sense of hope. The universe was vast and full of terrors, yes, but now he knew that there were monsters out there who fought for the light, and they were on board. The High Council of the Ethelgard Dominion convened one last time to discuss the human incident. The records were sealed. The location of Terra was purged from the public archives, labeled as a hazardous biological zone to prevent any foolish scavengers from stumbling upon the wardens of the galaxy. Kalen retired to his chambers, looking at a small gift Vance had left him. It was a physical book made of paper and ink, an archaic object. It was a collection of human philosophy. He opened it to a random page and read a quote that Vance had marked. "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." Kalen closed the book. The humans had gazed into the abyss. They had sailed right into it, and they had stared it down until it blinked. He smiled, a clicking of his mandibles. "Crazy humans," he whispered. "Absolutely crazy." And in the silence of the obsidian hall, for the first time in centuries, there was no fear. Only the quiet assurance that somewhere in the deadly orbit of a yellow sun, the ghost ship was standing watch.